The angry man lived in a small town where everyone knew him, yet no one truly understood him. People only knew one thing about him: he was always angry. His face was often tight with frustration, his voice loud and sharp, and his words hurt like stones thrown without care. Children avoided him, shopkeepers served him quickly, and neighbors whispered about him behind closed doors. To them, he was not a man with a name or a story. He was simply the angry man. Every morning, he walked through the narrow streets with heavy steps. If someone accidentally bumped into him, he shouted. If the tea seller was slow, he complained. If the bus was late, he cursed loudly. Anger followed him like a shadow, dark and constant. People believed he enjoyed being angry, that his heart was made of stone. But no one ever asked why he was like this. Inside his small, old house, the angry man lived alone. The walls were bare, and the silence inside was loud. At night, when the town slept, his anger softened into something else. He sat on a wooden chair near the window, staring into the darkness. In those quiet moments, memories returned without warning. Memories he tried to bury under anger during the day. Years ago, he had been a different person. He had laughed easily and trusted people deeply. He had a wife who loved him and a young son whose laughter filled the house. He worked hard, dreaming of giving his family a better life. He believed that kindness always came back to you. But life did not agree with his beliefs. One rainy evening changed everything. He was returning home from work, excited to bring sweets for his son. The road was slippery, the rain heavy. A loud noise, a sudden crash, and then darkness. When he woke up in the hospital, his world was already broken. His wife and son were gone. An accident had taken them while he survived with only physical wounds. From that day, pain settled deep inside his chest. At first, it was sadness. Then sadness turned into anger. Anger at the rain, the road, fate, and even at himself for surviving. He felt the world had cheated him. Every smile around him felt like an insult. Every laugh reminded him of what he had lost. People tried to help him at the beginning. Neighbors brought food, relatives spoke kind words, and friends asked him to share his pain. But he pushed everyone away. Talking hurt too much. Crying made him feel weak. Anger was easier. Anger made him feel strong, even if only for a moment. Slowly, people stopped trying. They labeled him as rude, difficult, and heartless. The angry man noticed this but did not care, or at least he pretended not to. Wearing anger like armor protected him from feeling the deep emptiness inside. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. As he walked past a small park, he heard a child crying. Normally, he would have ignored it. But the sound stopped him. The cry was soft, broken, and full of fear. Against his will, his feet moved toward the sound. A little boy was sitting alone on a bench, tears rolling down his cheeks. His hands were shaking. The angry man stood there, unsure what to do. His first instinct was to walk away. But the boy looked up at him with scared eyes, and in that moment, the angry man saw his own son's face from years ago. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice rough but quieter than usual. "I can't find my mother," the boy whispered. For a moment, the angry man felt his chest tighten. Memories flooded his mind, but he pushed them aside. He sat on the bench, keeping some distance. "She'll come," he said, trying to sound confident. They waited in silence. The boy slowly stopped crying. He talked about his school, his favorite games, and how his mother always held his hand. The angry man listened without interrupting. For the first time in years, his anger was silent. After some time, a woman ran into the park, her face pale with worry. When she saw her son, she rushed forward, hugging him tightly. Tears filled her eyes as she thanked the angry man again and again. He nodded awkwardly, not knowing how to respond. As he walked away, something felt different. His steps were still heavy, but his heart felt slightly lighter. That small moment had opened a crack in the wall he had built around himself. Over the next few days, he noticed small changes. He still felt angry, but it did not control him completely. He started observing people instead of judging them. He realized everyone carried pain, just like him, but they chose different ways to live with it. One evening, he stood in his house, looking at an old photograph of his family. Tears came, but this time he did not stop them. He allowed himself to feel the sadness he had been running from. It hurt deeply, but it also felt honest. The angry man understood something important that night. His anger was not his true nature. It was a wound that had never healed. And wounds, he realized, needed care, not punishment. The next morning, he walked through the town again. His face was still serious, but when the tea seller greeted him, he nodded instead of shouting. It was a small change, almost invisible, but it mattered. The angry man was still learning. His journey was far from over. Pain did not disappear in one day, and anger did not vanish completely. But for the first time in many years, he was walking forward, not away from his feelings. And slowly, without realizing it, the angry man was becoming just a man again. The angry man did not change overnight. After that small moment in the park, life continued as it always had, but something inside him had shifted. His anger still woke up with him every morning, but it no longer ruled his thoughts completely. It was like a loud voice in his head that had finally learned to pause and listen. He began to notice the town in ways he never had before. The same streets he once walked with frustration now felt familiar and tired, like they too carried stories of loss and hope. The shopkeepers still looked at him carefully, expecting harsh words, and neighbors still avoided his eyes. He understood why. He had taught them to fear his anger. Instead of feeling offended, he felt a quiet shame. One evening, while returning home, he saw an old man struggling to carry a heavy bag of vegetables. In the past, he would have walked past without a second thought. Helping others reminded him too much of the kindness he once believed in and later lost faith in. But this time, his body moved before his mind could stop it. "Let me help you," he said, reaching for the bag. The old man looked surprised, then smiled with relief. They walked together for a few minutes. The old man talked about his aching knees and how hard daily tasks had become. The angry man listened. When they parted ways, the old man thanked him warmly. That simple gratitude stayed with him longer than he expected. At home, the silence felt different now. It was still quiet, but not as heavy as before. He began to spend his evenings cleaning the house, opening windows, letting fresh air in. He found small objects that belonged to his wife and son, a toy car, a scarf, an old notebook. Instead of throwing them away in anger, he placed them gently in a box. Each object carried pain, but also love. Dreams started visiting him at night. In them, his son laughed and ran toward him. He would wake up with tears on his face, but also with a strange sense of peace. For years, he had been afraid of these dreams. Now, he welcomed them. They reminded him that love had existed in his life, and that it was still part of him. One day, the town announced a community event at the local school. Everyone was invited to help clean and repair the playground. The angry man read the notice and laughed bitterly at first. Community, he thought, was a word that had no place in his life. Yet the memory of the lost child in the park returned to his mind. After a long moment of hesitation, he decided to go. When he arrived, people stared in disbelief. Some whispered, others kept their distance. He ignored them and picked up a broom. As he worked, sweat ran down his face, and his muscles ached. But there was a strange comfort in doing something useful. A woman approached him cautiously and handed him a bottle of water. Their eyes met briefly. She smiled, and he nodded in return. Children ran around the playground, laughing and shouting. The sounds filled the air, and for a moment, his heart tightened with pain. He stepped aside, breathing deeply, reminding himself that this pain did not mean he was weak. It meant he was alive. As the day went on, people slowly began to talk to him. Simple conversations, small jokes, quiet cooperation. No one mentioned his past anger. They treated him like an ordinary man. That simple acceptance felt heavier than any insult he had ever received. In the following weeks, he continued to help in small ways. He fixed a broken fence, helped a neighbor with groceries, and started greeting people instead of avoiding them. Not everyone responded warmly, but some did. Trust returned slowly, like a plant growing after a long winter. One afternoon, he visited the park again. The same bench where he had met the lost boy stood quietly under a tree. He sat there, watching families pass by. A young father held his daughter's hand, reminding her not to run too fast. The angry man felt a deep ache, but this time, he did not turn it into anger. He let the feeling exist, soft and painful, like an old scar. He realized then that anger had never protected him. It had only isolated him. Facing his pain had been terrifying, but it had also given him a chance to heal. He could not change the past. He could not bring back the people he loved. But he could choose how to live with their memory. One evening, he stood in front of a mirror and studied his face. The lines were still there, signs of years filled with pain. But his eyes looked different. They were tired, yes, but also calmer. He whispered something he had not said in years: "I forgive myself." Those words did not erase his sorrow, but they lifted a weight he had carried for too long. He understood that surviving the accident was not a crime. It was a second chance. The angry man was no longer defined by his anger. It still visited him, especially on quiet nights, but it no longer owned him. He had learned that anger was only one part of his story, not the whole of it. As he walked through the town now, people saw change in him. Some smiled, some nodded, and some still remembered the old days. He accepted all of it. Healing, he knew, was not about being perfect. It was about being honest with yourself and patient with others. The angry man had finally made peace with his pain. And in doing so, he discovered something he thought he had lost forever: hope.